in the bio. But Lee and I came early, and we had the opportunity to chat. And this gentleman is a wealth of knowledge, and in a very brief amount of time, him asking me some questions about my business, he gave me several suggestions that I had not thought of. And as a result, I bought him breakfast for that. It was only fair payback, but I'd like to turn the meeting over to our guest speaker today, Lee Thurburn. Thank you.
All right, so I have a handout, and I'm going to admonish you not to try to get to the end and figure out what the punchline is, but I know that everybody's going to do that anyway. So just enjoy, pass those around, please. All right, so I'm going to talk about something most of you have probably not ever seen an actual formal presentation on, and that's how to raise capital for your business. Now, those of you that don't have businesses that need a lot of capital, which, there's quite a few people in this room that have businesses that are not capital intensive, maybe the idea that I'm going to try to put in your mind is how would you go about building a business that did need capital, and then how would you raise the capital? So my story, I'm going to do a super quick sort of overview of my past, my growth. The second slide is sort of a bullet point list of the things that I've done. I got an undergraduate degree in accounting from UT Arlington back in 1982. Worked for Arthur Anderson for a year, then started a business. That business failed. Then I went back into accounting, finished my CPA, had a CPA firm. Then I decided I didn't enjoy being a CPA. I'm kind of ADD, and to be a good CPA, you got to be really focused. So that really wasn't like the best fit for me. So I got hooked up with some doctors, and I helped take a network of optometrists and grow it from 7 doctors with 6 offices to 21, 22 doctors with about 19 offices here in the Metroplex called First Eye Care. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I joined another medical company, went around the United States building networks of optometrists and ophthalmologists, selling limited partnership interests to create these referral networks that that were there. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I wrote a book about how to be a successful doctor of optometry, because in the process of going around to all these doctors' offices and building this network of optometrists, I got to know a lot about optometry, and so I wrote a book, Modern Optometry for the 90s, a practice management guide, and I did some consulting for a while, and then decided that doctors were highly overrated in terms of people to work for. They're very egotistical, and basically a doctor will never listen to anything anybody other than another doctor tells them. So bottom line is after working in that arena for a while, I decided, I'm not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would. So I went back to school at UT Arlington and got my second degree, which was an MBA. I call it an MBA in international business because I took all the international options. And so anyway, I spent about 2 or 3 years doing that. And that was right about the early 1990s, and NAFTA was coming along. And so I thought, how do I get involved in something international? And in Mexico, Eastern Europe was falling apart, great opportunities there, but I didn't really know anybody in Europe, don't have any family there, so that would have been very difficult for me to get involved in. Same thing is true with the Asia Pacific Rim area, so I didn't do anything there. But I've been going to Mexico and surfing and doing stuff ever since I was a kid. Just love Mexico, and so I decided with NAFTA that was an opportunity. So I wrote about a 450-page book on Mexico, and published that book, self-published the book, and began selling it through foreign trade, Latin trade, U.S. trade magazines. And those magazines were relatively effective at helping me to get that book started, to the point that I decided to actually devote my full-time effort to it. And I started a company in January of 1983 called Mexico Information Services. And the purpose of that business was really very simple. It was to help companies in the United States that were looking for a market in Mexico to help them find customers in Mexico. And so I would basically travel to Mexico and spend like a week in Monterrey or a week in Guadalajara. And one of the things that I always do is I'd grab the yellow pages and I'd bring them back with me from the hotel room. And so then I'd get a call, real life call from Sally Beauty Supply. Sally wanted to know who are the salon operators in Mexico. They said, can you get me a list? And I said, hold on just a second. Flip through the phone book. Yeah, I can get you about 2,000 salons in Mexico. So I would build lists, and I had somebody that would actually call down, very expensive, call down to Mexico to verify the data and all that kind of stuff. So bottom line is we had this information business in the form of a magazine and a set of books. And in 1993 it was good, 1994 it was looking even better, life was good, and then in December of 1994, December 19th actually, that Monday morning, I woke up and found out that Mexico had devalued the peso. Literally overnight, it cost Mexicans 200 pesos to buy something that the previous day cost them 100 pesos. So naturally the market for opportunities, people in the United States selling stuff new, nobody in Mexico is going to buy stuff for a while. So the market normalized. And so that business I tried to save, but fundamentally it failed. So in May, June, and July of 1995, after several months of trying to keep the business alive, I basically had been paying my landlord by giving them computers. My landlord was this guy named James Bond. He's an attorney. He's an attorney over in Fort Worth. He sounded like Ross Perot. The answer I found, Bond here, James Bond. And so I called Mr. Bond up and I said, Mr. Bond, you have a daughter in college and she doesn't have a computer. I can't pay my rent this month, but how about I give you a computer? He said, okay. And then in June, I called him up and said, Mr. Bond, you got a kid in high school, your son. He doesn't have a computer. Okay. In July, I called him up and he said, Lee, I can't eat these things. You're going to have to start paying me. And I couldn't. So I had to move at the age of 40 into my back bedroom with my mom. And that is a real exciting thing for any 40-year-old to have to contemplate. I know you guys all relish doing the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think we're over 40.
Yeah, well. So, I did that, and, so now we're going to enter the phase where we start talking about FlashNet. So that business, the Mexico business, I had a little post office box, one of the little ones. You guys have all either had them or seen them. And, people would send me money in the mail, and they would be buying magazine subscriptions or books or databases and stuff from me. And at the high point, there would be multiple hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars a day coming in the mail. But by the time we got to June and July of 1995, it would be 1 or 2 envelopes a week with 50 bucks in them. So I was literally living on 50 to 100 bucks a week by the time we got to that point. I had a 67 Dodge Dart. The windows were either up or down. Your choice wouldn't change. No air conditioning, and so my choices were Mom or the Dodge Dart. I chose Mom. And in the first part of July, I moved into her back bedroom. Now, I had about 5 or 6 computers left, so I set some folding tables up, and in this back bedroom, I set up some computers, and I had modems, and, I had heard about the internet. I had no idea what it really was. I had a little concept, but this was the summer of 1995, and most of us weren't on the internet at that point. Nope. And so, on July 13th, at about 4 in the morning, I had a vision which told me what to do with my life. And the vision was this, and the vision was I had gone to check my post office box, just like I actually did pretty much every day. And as I squat down, because it was on the bottom, I opened the post office box and I reached in, and it was so crammed full of checks and envelopes, I literally could barely get the corner of one envelope, and I had to lean backwards to pull it out. And as I did, it released this flood of money. It just started pouring into my lap. And I woke up and I heard God tell me the following. He said, your fame, your future, and your fortune are tied to the internet and helping people. Go do it. I heard a voice just like you heard mine. It was crystal clear. I have no doubt that it was the Lord speaking to me. Well, so I kind of said, well, thank you, Lord. What's the internet? I had a little bit of an idea, but so at that point in time, the way you got on the internet was you got the Sunday TV Guide supplement, which they don't have anymore, and you flipped through that, and you found somebody that was selling internet, and you called them up, and they would send you a disc, which I did. A company in Dallas sent me a disc. I got on the internet, paid $25 a month or something like that, and I spent the next week about 100 hours glued to the computer, and my whole thing was to figure out what is this thing called the internet, and how do I make money on it. And so the first thing that kind of came to me, and I figured out, was that people are putting stuff on websites. And so I had 12 issues of a magazine. I had a book, and they were all text files in Microsoft Word on my computer. And I thought, well, I can dump down a text file and I can build a website. So it took me about a week. I put a website together, and within the next week, within about 3 weeks, my income had risen from 50 or 100 bucks a week to 300 to 400 bucks a week, because people in Canada and people in Europe were buying my databases and other information that I had. And I thought, well, this is pretty cool, but this isn't the flood of money that I was expecting. So the next thing I said was, well, what else can I do? Well, I can build websites now. So I took an ad, one of those little 1/4-inch ads, about a 1-inch column ad in the classified section of the business magazine. And, you know, I advertised build websites, 500 bucks. Somebody called me up. They said, build me a website. I only got one person. The ad cost me 500 bucks. I made 500 bucks. I have an advanced degree in marketing and CPA and business. And I knew that 500 in and 500 out was not a good deal. I mean, I could figure that one out. So I said, okay, what's next? And so my mom had a real estate license. I actually had one that I had not used. So I got in touch with the Board of Realtors in Fort Worth, and I got a contract, non-exclusive, a contract that allowed me to put the MLS on the internet. So with that contract, I contacted an investor that had lost 40,000 bucks in my Mexico business, but he knew it wasn't my fault. And I called him up and said, hey, would you like to be part of this internet thing I'm going to do? And he said, sure. And he sent me a check for $50,000. But he said, Lee, you can't cash that check until you get at least another $50,000. You need 100. So he introduced me to a guy that had just sold a software company, and I went and talked to that guy, and he wasn't interested, but his son was. So a lead led to a lead led to a lead. His son put in 35, helped raise 15. We had our 100, cashed all the checks, and about the middle of August, roughly August 15th, we formed a company called FlashNet. Now, that is a very fast, very rapid sequence of things happen. 1 month from vision to 100,000 bucks, having a corporation and being ready. I mean, that is a very rapid. That tells me that it actually was a God thing. It was blessed. So we raised the 100,000 bucks. We got a space. We hired a person, and eventually another one. And the next sort of interesting part of the story is it took us 2 months to get our T1 lines hooked up, so we couldn't provide internet service until we had our facility connected to the internet. It took 2 months. On November 4th of 1995, we went live about 4 in the morning. Everything happens at 4 in the morning for some reason. We went live about 4 in the morning and could actually bring people onto the internet. Now, our business plan was that real estate agents needed to be on the internet. We were going to put the MLS there, so real estate agents needed to be there. They needed to have dial-up access, and they needed to have ads next to the properties they had listed. And so that was the business plan. And a couple of days before we went live, Scott, my partner, and I were looking at this, we called it the modem room. It was a 10 by 10 room with a couple of plastic racks and a bunch of US Robotics 33.6 modems sitting on there, blinking but not making any noise. And we said, man, that's a lot of modems. What are we going to do? You know, if the realtors don't use what we've got, well, let's find a backup plan. So we went around real quick and talked to a bunch of computer stores in the Tarrant County area, and we got 5 of them signed up, and they agreed to sell dial-up service for us. Fast forward to the end of November. During the month of November, Scott and I had been out there pounding away, doing demonstrations and talking to real estate agents, and we'd signed up 50 real estate agents at about 25 bucks a month. The computer stores had sold 200 accounts to people buying computers. So I'm kind of fast forwarding something here. The computer stores had sold 200 accounts to people buying computers. Now here's the thing. The real estate agents, they needed what we have, but they didn't want it. They were resisting it. The consumers did not need the internet, but they were hearing about it and they wanted it. So we real quickly figured out the difference between selling something people need and selling something people want. That's a major lesson that we can all take advantage of. A lot of us get stuck in businesses where we sell what people need and we know they need it, but what we have to do is we have to convert their understanding of need to a decision to purchase, which nobody does unless they want it. So converting people from need to want is like an uphill battle. It's always tough. If you can just start with something people want, it's way easier to build a company. So that was one of the first big lessons that we learned. Now, When we started the company, there were 1,450 competitors, and we first provided service on November 4th. 3.5 years later, we took the company public, so I'll fast forward to that. There were over 5,500 competitors when we took our company public, and we were the 13th largest in the nation at that time. Wow. So we had grown from the smallest out of 1,450 to one of the largest in a much bigger field, and we did that because we did not get bogged down in the technology. We focused on the business. But that's just sort of an interesting thing. Now, the next slide, I want to just give you an idea of kind of what the return on investment that investors got. So the very first round investors, the people that put money in before we started raising additional capital, which I'm going to have a story about that in a second, those investors received a 400 times return on their investment. So for that limited small group of people, that the total investment was around $250,000. Most of those people ended up being on our board, and they were locked in, and they could not sell at the earliest convenience. But once we took the company public, there were a few investors where a $50,000 investment returned a $20 million return. That's a huge return. The average ROI for first round investors was in the 100 times return range. So 100x return in 3.5 years, still not too shabby. So that's kind of what that did. Now here's why we were able to raise that money and do a public offering. With that steep slope over the period of months, these are, let's see, this takes us from November of 95 to September of 99.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah, almost 4 years. That steep slope took us from 0 customers to close to 300,000 customers nationwide. When you want to raise capital, you have to have something with a steep slope. You cannot do a big capital raise if you don't have something with a steep slope. It just ain't going to happen. Investors, people with real money to put into deals, don't care about what's called lifestyle businesses. Businesses which make you a nice living but won't return them a huge multiple on their investment. So anyway, that's why that steep slope of growth, which is because people wanted internet access, that steep growth, the slope growth, is what drove all of our success. Now, I've mentioned raising, and the pitch for this meeting is I've been responsible or part of the raising of about $85 million worth of funds in my life. Most of those relate to FlashNet. Our initial round was $250,000, and then after that, about every 6 to 12 months, we would somehow infuse additional capital into the business. So we raised 250, then 500, then a couple of million, then basically $5 million chunks every 6 to 12 months to continue to fund the business. So I'm going to back up now to the November of 1995 timeframe. So we ended up that month with about 250 customers. Now, during the middle of December, we suddenly realized we're going out of business because we were getting $25 per customer and per month. And then, but we're having to buy all this equipment, so we get $25 because they buy 1 month worth of internet, but we've got to go buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of equipment to provide those services. So we were just sucking cash out of our bank account and dumping it into equipment, and we could see that without a lot of additional capital, we were going to be out of cash sometime in the January to February timeframe. So we decided to roll the dice and change our business model from charging $25 a month to charging $99 a year. Now, we did not actually have a clue as to what it would take to provide the service. But we just knew we were going to be out of business if we didn't do something. So we lowered our price to $99, and we started focusing our attention through newspaper advertisements on the consumer market, and our growth rate started to pick up. And then, the week before Christmas, a guy from KLIF Radio came in and sat down in my lobby and would not leave until I talked to him. Of course, I'm this big-time executive of a tech company, so I make him wait for like 30 minutes before I'll talk to him. But he waited, and I'm thankful that he did because he convinced me that I should advertise with him. His pitch was this: if the week after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, is the worst week of the year for radio advertising because nobody wants to be on that week. Not true, but that's what he told me. And he said, I'll give you $10,000 worth of airtime for just $5,000. Probably would have done that anyway. And I'll give you 2 tickets to the Cowboys playoff team. playoff game. So I'm thinking,
That's nice.
I come back with, you give me 4 tickets and you got a deal. So I gave him, and he did. He gave me 4 tickets. We did. Now we spent $5,000 that week. That week, we earned $25,000 in revenue. We signed up 250 customers at about $100 a month, $99 a month. I mean, $99 a year. So that week, we spent $5,000. That week, we got back $25,000. Now, my advanced degree in accounting tells me the following. If I can give $1 and get $5 back within 7 days, now all I have to do is figure out how to give bucks to you, and I get bucks back, right? So it took us a couple of weeks to get the machine in place. We ended up the first year with 880 customers, 250 of which had come in the last week. The next month, January, we added about 1,000 customers, then 1,500 in February, 2,000 in March, 50,000 during 1996, another 60 or 70,000 in 1997, another 70 or 80,000 in 1999. Actually, the growth rate was relatively steady, so 50, 60,000. We ended up about 3.5 years later with 250, 200,000 customers when we went through our public offering after having raised all that money. So I have some lessons that I've learned through that process that are pertinent to what is needed for a big company, for a company to be deserving of capital. So it's not just you want capital, but you have to deserve capital. So here are some of the lessons that I learned. First of all, want versus need. Sell what people want. If you're in a business where you're selling something they need, you're in the wrong business. You need to sell something they want, because otherwise you're pushing the ball uphill all the time. Number 2, enjoy the ride. You know, we were always looking forward to the future. Oh, in just 3 months we'll make enough money to do this, and oh, in just 3 months maybe we'll be profitable. But the reality is, oh, in just 3 months or 6 months we'll do our IPO and then everything will... I have never had so much fun in my entire life as I did that entire 3.5-year journey of building the business. And yes, there were lots of stresses and there were always goals, but you know what? The journey was the destination. That was the beautiful part of it. So enjoy it. Read books. Innovation equals perspiration. If you ever think that you've got an original idea, I promise you one thing. You have not read enough or talk to enough people. There is no such thing as an original idea. Right. There's all kinds of ways to take existing good ideas and make them better. So read the book and realize that the way you differentiate yourself in the market, it's not flashes of inspiration. I was given guidance, but I wasn't told how to do it. It's not flashes of inspiration, it's hard work and perspiration. Jackson Brown, Thomas Edison, they'll all tell you, you know, you sit down, you do the work, and then you come up with the wonderful stuff. Ego, edging God out. You know, God had given me a message, but after I became successful, it became me, and it became all about me, and I thought I was the one that did it. And just like He gives, He can take away, but here's what happened. My ego got in the way of almost all of the relationships that I had. Relationships with family, relationships with investors, relationships with customers. I basically became, in my own mind, my own little God. And that kind of thing, when you have massive success, I mean, I went to Las Vegas, and because we spent $11 million on radio ads across the nation, I had somebody, a basketball player that was in town for a convention, a college basketball player, rode down an elevator with me, and I spoke to him, and after a couple of minutes, he said, or a couple of seconds, he goes, "Hey, aren't you that guy on the radio?" And my point is when you start getting, you know, people recognizing you and all that kind of stuff, it can go to your head. Don't let it, because ego can kill your business just like it can kill you. Dilute me. Don't get greedy. A lot of times, small business owners, and I see this a lot with students, and I teach entrepreneurship at UT Arlington. This is an incredibly common thing. You get an idea. Great, ideas are a dime a dozen. Literally, they're a dime a dozen. They're not all that big a deal. You get an idea and you think it's wonderful, it's unique. It's what I call the beautiful baby syndrome. Your baby is beautiful. Have you ever seen an ugly baby? We've all seen ugly babies. We've all seen ugly babies. But the reality is, for you, that is a beautiful baby if it's your baby. Same thing with your ideas. Your ideas are always beautiful, but the reality is you're going to have other good ideas. Don't get so committed to the one idea that you think you've got to ride that all the way to the end and it's got to handle your retirement. Flip that deal. So dilute me. Don't get greedy. The golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rules. I got 10 minutes? Thank you. Okay. What you don't know is going to kill you. Murphy. Always be prepared for unexpected contingencies because they're going to happen. You need more money than you think. Number 7, there is only one exit strategy. You hear all these things about exit strategies. I'm going to tell you there's one and only one exit strategy. A strong positive cash flow and a predictable revenue stream. If you don't have a strong positive cash flow and a predictable revenue stream, you got nothing. You got a retirement for yourself until you drop. And then number 8, full-time job. Raising money is a full-time job. You cannot do it as a part-time job. You can't raise just a little bit and go start your business and then hope that you've got enough and then maybe later go back and get some more. You got to get all you need right up front, because if you don't, you're not going to have the time to go also raise it. Plus you have the double whammy of, well, you didn't ask for enough the first time. Why should I think you know what you need now? So you don't want to have to confront that issue, which I guarantee you your investors will come back at you with. Okay, so when you're raising capital, there's some laws and rules that you need to be aware of. And the first one I'm going to say is Rule 504, the most common private placement memorandum rule that you need to know. And here's the bottom line. You can raise up to $1 million per year from an unlimited number of accredited investors. Complying with state exemptions is easy, and the securities don't have to be restricted. That means they can sell the securities anywhere, anytime. There's nobody who want to buy them, but they have the ability to do trade. So number 1 and number 2, $1 million is fine, unlimited number of accredited investors. An accredited investor is any investor that, according to the defined term in the SEC, earns at least $200,000 a year as an individual, $300,000 if they're married, 2 years in a row have to hit that, or has a personal net worth excluding the residence of $1 million. You are not responsible for validating or verifying that they are accredited, but you do need to get them to sign a document. So every investor that's doing one of these deals needs to sign a document that says, I am an accredited investor. Even, you don't care if they are or not, you just need to get them to sign the document before you take their money. So these are important points for you to know. Now, Rule 505 basically bumps the number to 5 million, 35 accredited, unlimited number of accredited, 35 non-accredited. These are friends and family. Here's the problem with Rule 505. Even though it's more money and you can bring in non-accredited, you have to have audited financial statements. Audited financial statements used to be easy to get, $5,000, $10,000. Now, because of Sarbanes-Oxley and a bunch of other stuff, you're not going to be able to get audited financials without spending probably $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or more on the light end. So this is a little bit problematic, but there is a way around it. Don't do any business before you've raised your money. Because if you don't have anything to audit, there is no audit cost. So by simply not raising all of your capital in advance, you don't have an audit fee requirement. So raise your capital before you start the business. Rule 506, there's crowdfunding stuff out there. You guys have all seen things like EquityNet, EquityNet.com and crowdfunder.com. Equity, huh? Kickstarter. Different kind. Crowdfunding is for equity. The main thing that you need to know about that is EquityNet has over 3,000 accredited investors in their database. And for just $900, one-time lifetime fee, you can actually get in there and see who they are. Some of them are interested in real estate, some technology, some telecom, some pharmaceuticals, all this other stuff. You can go in there and you can access them. You can send them messages, come look at my deal, and they'll be glad to do it. So crowdfunding is a great way to be able to find people in today's market. In fact, 2017, 2018, that's one of the ways. If you're trying to raise capital, spend the $900, get access to those 3,000 accredited investors. You cannot find accredited investors any cheaper than that. That's like thousands of them. How do you go find them any other way?
You said there were 2, or is it just the one?
Well, there's crowdfunder.com and equitynet.com. There's actually quite a few others. Those are the 2 I'm most personally familiar with. Okay, then there's this new thing. Now, the crowdfunding thing became possible 2.5 years ago, but as of this year, January 1st of this year, a totally new thing called Regulation A+. Regulation A is the regulation area in the Securities Exchange Commission rules that allow you to go public. That's Regulation A, Reg A filing. That's a public offering. Reg A Plus is basically it's called a mini IPO. So to do an IPO, you need somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in cash, because that's what it's going to take in the way of attorney's fees and accountant's fees and publishing fees and all the things. To do an IPO mini, a Reg A Plus Tier 1, is only going to cost you $35,000 to $50,000. You can raise up to $20 million. This is some stuff that's really, really, really cool. Up to $20 million, of which $6 million can be, or 30%, can be funds that come from stock being sold by the original founders. Okay, so this gives original founders the ability to get some liquidity. General solicitation, unlike selling an IPO stock, you can actually advertise on KRLD radio or whatever you want to for a Reg A+. You can test the waters. Sign up on my website. We'll let you know when we're ready to collect your money. That's test the waters. State blue sky laws are easy. You don't have to have audited financials. And not only do you, bottom line, you don't have to deal with accredited investors. You can deal with anybody at all can give you money in a Reg A Tier 1, and they can trade the securities after the sales. There's no disclosures. People, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. I got 5 minutes? Okay. So here's actually an incredibly cool way to leverage the Reg 504 and the Reg A Plus in a sequential fashion. Raise capital to prepare for a Reg A Plus, use the funds to accelerate growth, then 6 to 12 months later, make a Reg A Tier 1 offering. So, if you have a business that has the right attributes to be of interest to investors, and it's got to have the right attributes, we're going to cover those in just a moment, but if you have a business that has the right attributes to be of interest to investors, a great path is to do a Reg 504 offering, Rule 504, Regulation D 504 offering, and say raise up to $1 million, whatever you need, but up to $1 million. Use that money to accelerate and prepare, and then 6 to 12 months later, having accelerated and prepared, do a Reg A Plus where you can go back to the markets. Now you can go to the public market and you can do a mini IPO and raise 5, 10, 20 mil, up to $20 million. Let me finish through this and then I'll deal with questions because I don't want. So anyway, that would be a great scenario. So here's what a company would have to do that kind of scenario. First of all, to be successful at that strategy, a company would need, first, a large addressable market. A large addressable market basically means the market opportunity that company could tap into needs to be measured in at least, minimum, hundreds of millions of dollars of market value, potentially billions, preferably billions. Number 2, an exit strategy that makes sense. You have to have, aside from the positive cash flow, a clear idea in your mind that you can articulate of who might be a buyer for your company. A scalable product. You have to have something that basically once you've got the process, the system set up, all you do is pour money and it ramps up. So you have to have an incredibly scalable process. You have to have a product or a service that is actually wanted, not just needed, but already wanted. You need to have, if possible, minimal competition, and in the ideal world, it would have a contractually or habituated recurring revenue stream. In other words, once people start using your product, they're paying on a monthly basis because those companies have the highest predictable value because you can predict, the buyer can predict what the future revenue is, and then they can do a discounted net present value calculation and get back to a reliable number that everybody can agree on. That's the value. So, here's an actual pitch, actual real life pitch. I have a company like that, and I'm ready to do this offering. So I thought as part of my demonstration, I would both prepare myself as well as give you a live pitch. So all of this has been up to and leading to the pitch, and the pitch is this. My company, Apricot Rocket, I am preparing a private placement memorandum. I'm actually very soon, literally going to be able to put in somebody's hands a private placement justifying $240,000 worth of capital raise. But our CRM has the ability to be attractive and used by up to 28 million businesses in the United States alone. We have a shopping cart solution that there's over 12 million businesses in the United States that could use our shopping cart. We have a drop ship solution, so if you want to be, and I'm not talking about you in particular, but the general you, if you want to be in the online retailing business but you don't know what to sell, we can solve that problem for you with products that can be drop shipped by somebody else and let you sell stuff to your audience and make money and solve the supply chain side of it. That's the affiliate shells. It's integrated small data, which means that we can actually capture information. This is kind of unique. We can capture information about what your best customers are. We all know you have good customers and bad customers. The bad ones, they come in the door, you run for the stock room. The good ones, hey, I love you, you're going to buy some great stuff, right? Well, what do the good customers look like? Tall, short, educated, what kind of car do they drive, where their kids go to school, all that stuff we can tell you. Marketing automation, so in summary, we have a scalable solution, a large addressable market, a clear exit strategy, and a recurring revenue stream. If you or somebody you know is interested, you can see me afterwards, and I'll be glad to provide, collect your information. I'm kind of testing the market now and get the information to you. What I'm offering is $6,000 units. There's 40 of them, so that's going to be $240,000. They're 1% of equity per unit. If 40 units are sold, that'll be 40% of the equity. The market cap on the company is $600,000. And I expect your ROI in about 12 months when we do a Reg A Plus through the basically the stock that can be sold from the existing founders at that time to do somewhere about a 5x return on your investment in 6 to 12 months when we do a Reg A Plus. So that's my pitch. And that's an example of what I hope you'll consider a good pitch. That if you were making a pitch to somebody, you would want to have something similar in the way of a pitch to be able to make. Now, most times, I'm very blessed, I have been given a tremendous amount of time here. Most times you'll have only about 3 to 5 minutes to pitch a big investor. So you've got to boil what I just did down to about 3 to 5 minutes. That's my pitch. That's the end of my presentation. If you're interested, let me know. But I'm now ready for questions if we have time.
I'm going to clap for you. Awesome. Okay, so we do have a few minutes for questions.
Yes.
What time do we have, Randy?
It's quarter up, so you got quarter
Okay,
up.
so go ahead.
My question was, when you're doing the ramp up in your first step, are you already selling product at that point, or are you still just structuring for the offering?
So it is always, when you're raising capital, better to not be in a proof of concept mode, to actually already have a proof of concept. Now, the greater the degree to which you have something that's on a steep slope, the better. The more that something is actual revenue, the better. But you can do offerings if you have just even just a solid proof of concept, or if you have a rapid a growth rate in say subscribers, like Twitter. Twitter was hugely valuable before it ever made a single nickel because they had an incredibly steep growth curve on their subscriber base, and everybody said, well, someday they'll figure out how to make money. So investors will give you money. The steeper you've got something, the more valuable your company is, if you can translate that into a predictable revenue stream at some point in the future.
So the answer is yes. Go ahead and start selling product, not just proof.
Still make revenue as much as fast as you can. So absolutely always be doing that. Other questions?
Pretty cool.
Okay, so obviously it's better to sell while you're ramping up. Once you get the product out there and the IPO done, go ahead and sell off your shares before it has a chance to level out or go down, right?
I would not say that. I would say that
Sell off your shares.
Every situation is unique, but the idea behind raising capital is not to like put money in your pocket. The idea behind raising capital is really very simple. Put that money in the business and drive the value of the business forward at a faster rate in creating greater value for all the shareholders, which includes you.
Right.
At some point in time, you naturally want to take some money off the table.
Yeah.
So the ability to take up to 30% of the stock in a Reg A Plus Tier 1 and put that in your pocket is just a way to allow founders to be able to get some capital back in their pockets, because sometimes it takes 2, 3, 5 years to get to the point where you can do a Reg A Plus offering.
Right.
But when you bring in that Reg A Plus money, aside from the maximum amount of 30%, basically the real purpose of that money is simply to grow the company faster. So whatever the value of the stock on a per share basis is at the time you do a Reg A Plus, the idea is to take that money and make that value go up by a factor of 2, 5, or 10 over the next 3 to 6 years, so that 3 to 5 years, so that 5 years down the road, the people that got in on the Reg A Plus and they bought in at their price, they now get a 5 or 10 times return on their money. But they're much more likely to do that because you have a bigger pool of money, which theoretically ensures success and lowers risk.
Do you encourage the initial investors to keep their skin in the game, or do you let them go ahead and cash out?
Absolutely. I encourage. Here's the thing, if the original investors aren't going to keep their money in the pool, then why would the other investors want to give you any money? If all they're doing is cashing out and they're riding on your money, that gives me much lower confidence in whether you're going to respect my money.
Okay.
Right. Interesting.
No, it's just you have to keep skin in the game. That's obvious.
I think so. Yeah, but I mean, there's people that'll take money off the table, and that's fine. But don't get too greedy, and don't cash in your chips too soon. If you're the founder, you're the person driving the vision, and the visionary, the vision maker, the vision crafter is critical to the long-term success of the company.
I love it. I mean, that's great. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Give him another hand.
Thank you.
I want to tell you that you know, I trusted Lee. I've known Lee for a bit, and I saw him at Success North Dallas, and I said, you know, we're doing this thing, and you know, you talk about divine moments or divine appointments. I mean, he was there. I said this. He said, I'll be there, and I think he'd be great in the summit. You guys agree? You know, it'd be good to have him do a talk or an interview with Jen or you know, whatever on the summit. You guys agree?
Yeah.
So yeah, so you got a vote of confidence there. I'm sure that the Facebook audience will probably agree with that as well.
Karen said thank you.
The real key to this thing, did you hear what he said a bunch of times here, which I just absolutely love? That's why I got so excited at the end. What did he say? What's the word that is most important to me? One word.
Visionary.
Vision. He said you have a vision. You find what people need because you have a vision. You authentically go through it. He talked a lot about the what and the how, but the why has to come from you.
Right.
And the why is what you're putting out there. And the why and how you go about it, if you know that, that gives you the ability to do what he's describing here.
Start with why.
So start with your well, Simon Sinek is one of my biggest fans. I'm his biggest fan of him right now. I wish he was my biggest fan. He doesn't know me yet, but I have no original thought. That's another thing I said. So anyway, you awesome, Lee. It's been a great talk, and again, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks to the Facebook audience. A couple of other housekeeping things.